It's really good to have everybody here to hear what Perry Samson has to say about getting beyond multiple choice. So Perry is a professor in class, climate and space sciences, and he is a person who has been working with different kinds of instructional technology and different kinds of tools for a long, long, long time. Loves to play with the new thing, find out what it's good for. And if he doesn't find the new thing that he wants, he might just build it himself, or with a little bit of help. And so you'll hear some of that. So you might be familiar with Weather Underground, one of the things that kind of in that vein of build it. So this is going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of data that we can gather from these large courses. And I think this is very much in line with the goals of the Foundational Course Initiative in terms of understanding what are the data that we can collect, especially in these large courses where we can get big N and really start making sense of how students are learning, how we can engage students with the material. And I think in the past, we may have been limited somewhat by the technologies that were available. Multiple choice was surely an efficient way to get data about how students were responding to particular items. You could do analysis of your exam and things like that. But Perry's going to introduce us to a whole other world of data and what we can do with that. So help me welcome Perry Samson.
And thank you for inviting me back. As a rule of thumb, never invite a meteorologist to your party. Inviting disaster. So I'd like to give a bit of a background here, and since I don't know yet your backgrounds necessarily, I have a few friendly faces I know in the crowd. I'm going to present to you the trajectory that I've been on in my life, and this is my 39th year teaching here at the university. And along that, over those years, I have had the opportunity to teach thousands and thousands of students, like Tom Brady. And over that time, learning how students learn has been, my job as a meteorologist, doing research in atmospheric science, but you're asked to do this teaching thing. So as part of doing that, I have also built some technology that I'll talk about. And also, to be clear, I don't think I need to tell you guys, but if you have questions or you're confused, just yell, stop me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. I'm hoping this turns into a conversation, not just me blathering on about my experience. And here I try to put together my trajectory of what things I have been through since well, back in the day, very halfway through my career, but I was lecturing, and my chairman came and said, "It's time for you to teach the intro course." And when they asked me to do that, I did a terrible job. I'm going to be blunt. I decided I would derive equations or something in class, and it was a terrible effort. And so along the way, I started teaching a course called Global Climate with Ben Vanderplum and others, and we were co-teaching that course, and we started thought, well, let's use clickers. Somehow we want to engage. We heard clickers were good. We can engage the students in the use of clickers in the classroom. And how many of you used those before I started that one? Okay. Well, the students came back and said, look, the clickers are fine. You're asking us these questions, but I found they weren't using the word. They were using the word clickers in the sentence with the word lame. Often not because the clicker itself was a lame device, is that it was being used in a lame way. And many instructors were simply using it for attendance. And the students found that lame, and so they just gather up 10 or 12 of them and go into class and click them all. Plus, being a meteorologist, there are more kinds of questions I wanted to ask than just multiple choice could answer. So, not on here, the first system I created was in early 2000s, and it was called Image Quiz. The whole concept in that was I wanted to be able to ask a question of an image. Where on the weather map would you expect to find wind speeds that are highest today? And you have to use your logic to put a dot on the map And this became quite exciting for us because now we could ask questions about climate and weather and show maps and have students think about spatial relationships in the atmosphere. And they put the dots on the map, and I'll tell you this. I'm also going to tell you about the failures along the way. The first failure was the decision that I would have the names of the student pop up on the dot on the map. So if you had an answer that was really stupid and you clicked on it, it showed that Johnny did that. That was wildly unpopular. We learned to remove that from the system. And plus, the students then started coming and said, look, if we're going to lug our laptop into the class, then how about we could do some other things? Like, could you share your slides, and could we ask you questions, and could we take notes, and da-da-da. So just listening to what the students told me they wanted, I then created the next system, which was called Lecture Tools. And Lecture Tools was an ongoing project with the National Science Foundation, where we could ask now multiple choice questions, yes, but I can now ask a wide range of questions, including the image kinds of questions, and other question types as well. And the students could take notes in the system, and the students could ask us questions. And all this is going to come back into this conversation as we go through this, because I'm assuming you're all teaching some foundational course, or you're here for the food. So I'm hoping that we have a conversation here about some important, how do we engage students in these large classes? And my story was that my chairman said, look, you're going to go teach the intro course. We have 40 kids in it. But we really need to get the numbers up because nobody knows we exist out there on North Campus, so how do we get the numbers up? So I took the course, it's called Weather and Climate, changed the name to Extreme Weather. Now there are 250 students in the course. But extreme and for when you're teaching, if you want to really ramp up the population, because that seems to be a draw. So now with that many students in the room, you have to come up with a new strategy, as I'm sure all of you do, about how are you going to engage these students in a meaningful way, first of all. And as you engage them in some new way of interacting with you, how do you know that works? So these are the challenges that we've walked through from Lecture Tools. And then Lecture Tools, the National Science Foundation came to us and said, look, you should look into this SBIR program, which is Small Business Innovative Research, and see if this thing could have commercial value, which I took to mean that they weren't going to fund me anymore. I did that, and I got a group of students who then moved this off campus through tech transfer here, and it became a business and was serving students in many schools around the country. And then Echo360 showed up and said, how about we join with you and add to it, we can pass some other aspects. And so the system we have on campus now is run by Echo360, but embodied in are many of these principles that we created in Lecture Tools. And today I'm going to be revealing to you something the public hasn't seen yet. I want you to give me some feedback on, because I'm thinking about, in my class, I've done research, as I'll show you, and it's probably no surprise to you, as you can predict the students who are going to be failing in your class based on their incoming GPA usually. But because the Echo system allows me to collect data about what my students are doing, I've learned that the students who come in with a low GPA, they behave in a way that is different from every other student in the class. There's a reason they're doing badly, and it's not necessarily that they're cognitively less able. It's that somehow they've not learned how to study in any way that's useful. So knowing that, we're trying to build a system. So how could I mentor a student who's coming to my class who doesn't really know how to study? And I'll talk about that at the end. Any questions so far? So here's what I was hoping to do today. and I'm hoping these are topics of value to this group. But first, I would like to discuss with you, and really discuss with you, not just talk to you, about methods to increase inquiry in large lecture courses. How do you get students to ask questions in class? And I've got some tricks that I've pulled along the way that seem to make that happen. We'd like to examine ways to help students understand what they don't understand, metacognition. How can I help the student know that they don't know what I'm talking about? Clickers are a step in that direction, but what more can we do? I'm going to show you, again, some things I've built that help that happen. Third, consider the value of measuring student behaviors. So if you knew, I'm just going to creep out some, there's no students in there, right? Good. Because we measure stuff about the students, what they're doing before, during, and after class, which is feedback from which we can do some research and discover what is it the students are doing that is related to their grades and what they're doing that isn't. And not to flip the cards yet, but we've ingested the data from this Echo system, so we know what they're doing during class, as well as from Canvas, so we know what they're doing on other parts of the system as well as their homework system and other resources. And so for all the digital things that students are doing, are any of them related to their grades? That's what we want to discover there. And the bigger question there is, all right, let's assume you did. In fact, let me just tell you right now, with this, I'm able now to predict by the end of week 3 who's going to fail my class with 90% accuracy, based entirely on their behaviors. So now what do we do? If you had that sort of forewarning, what are the interventions that would be effective in getting students to either change their behaviors or being involved more fully in the class? That's sort of the challenges. And lastly, just to brainstorm here about how to provide mentorship at scale. We have things like eCoach on campus, which are an attempt in this direction. What else could we do that would help maybe mentor students who are less well prepared? So, the first one is the methods for inquiry. And much of what I'm going to talk about with you today came as a surprise to me. Where, because I have the data, I'm a meteorologist, I ingest data all the time, all the weather data in the world, ingesting, and we're doing models all the time to figure out what this weather event means in terms of future weather events. So we basically took the same tools that we use in meteorology and applied it to the classroom. What are the students doing, and what does that mean for the future? So start with this, and I'm guaranteeing everybody in the room has had this experience where you've gone through some material in class and you stop and you go, any questions? I call it a coffee break. But nothing happens. And most students don't. Occasionally, 3 or 4 male students in the front of the room might pose a question. But for the most part, you don't get a whole lot of response unless you ask the question verbally. So I've created a survey, which I'm happy to share with you, that I submit to my students at the beginning of the semester. The purpose of the survey is to get some basic information about their fears and strengths, to get something about their demographics, and to learn a bit about their background and interests. And lastly, and very importantly, when you're doing any of this kind of research, is to try to measure somehow what's the student's motivation. How motivated are they to get an A in your class? And if you're pre-med, I guarantee you're motivated, or pre-law or whatever. But other students have to take this class. They have to take an LS&A science distribution class, and so they may as well take Samson's. But they're not really worried about getting a high grade. We've got a lot of athletes in there. They're just happy to get through the semester. So knowing their motivation helps also interpret the results later on you might get. So thinking about how to measure that beginning of the semester is important. And one of the questions I asked them is, how comfortable Are you asking a verbal question in a large lecture hall? It's probably not, you can probably already imagine, and think for yourself how comfortable you are asking a, like a moment ago, asking a question in a group. And what we discovered here, and I've been doing this now for several semesters, is that when I have a question in class, I'm comfortable asking them verbally. Now for the male students, and the way it works here is they agree with that is the darker colors, they don't agree with that are the lighter colors. So for the male students, it is kind of half and half, or comfortable or not comfortable asking a verbal question. But for the female students, more than a third of them are strongly uncomfortable asking a verbal question in a large lecture hall. Now I've been teaching, as I said now, for what, 39 years here at the university, and over that time, I never knew this, so I just assumed that when I asked the question, I asked any questions, and there were no questions, that I had just so nailed that lecture. You do that little victory dance. Throw the chalk down, that's how old I am, throw the chalk down, and you know, walk out of the room thinking, yeah, I'm good. When the reality is there was an uneven playing field in the room that I didn't know existed. And here it is, that not everyone is willing to, let's be blunt, almost nobody wants to stand up and ask a question apparently. But in particular, females are far less comfortable. Also, if your English is not your native language, you are really uncomfortable asking a verbal question in class. So for all those reasons, and one of my overarching goals as scientists is to try to invite a wider distribution of people into the sciences. And if I am not making a comfortable environment for you to learn in and participate in the science, then I have failed. So these large classrooms are, by design or by their nature, going to dissuade large populations from participating at a high level. That's lesson number one. So how do you overcome that? I've got colleagues that say, well, I know every student's name, I'll just ask them a question. Well, that's hell. I mean, that's just terrible. Yeah, I've done that. I asked somebody a question in class, and it looks like I just thrown food on them. They're so taken, and they look just traumatized by being singled out. And I'm the first to agree that as a student goes through the years here at Michigan or any college, they should be willing to ask a verbal question. They must mature to that point. But these foundational courses are exactly the place where we can maybe give them some tools, give them some confidence that they can do that. So the thing that I created was basically what the students asked me for. They said, I want a side channel where I can ask you a question during class. Fine.
Barry, you have a question?
Yes. So I'm just curious how large these classes are.
About 250.
So do you think the result will be different with smaller classes?
Well, I've used this myself only. I've got classes I teach at the 100 level and classes I teach at 400 level. At the 400 level, the tools I'm going to show you, I don't use them. I don't have them ask digital questions in the upper level classes, because those are actually smaller, and at that point I feel like they should be willing to ask the questions verbally. Maybe that's wrong, but that was just the way I've been using it. Other questions? All right, well this is the tool, this is this Echo360 system, and you're seeing in the view here what the student would see. And we could cover a lot of ground here, and one asks, I try a lot of stuff in the classroom because I've got tenure, so I can do this. And one of the things that I've been trying for the last couple of years is, with this Echo360 system, you click a button and your class is now broadcast live. And given the weather that you're familiar with here in Michigan, this has become an extremely popular feature. So students can come to class physically, or they can sit in their dorms or wherever and they can still participate with me. And with this tool, they're going to be able to ask questions, answer questions, do all the things they could during class. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about also to what degree do students who are watching from away learn more or less than the students who physically come to the classroom. But I can do that research. For me, this is a little disconcerting because that means that on a really cold day, my class would be sparsely populated, and the chances of anybody laughing at my jokes is way down when there's only a few in the room. Nonetheless, thinking for the future, we should be thinking here about what are these foundational courses going to look like in the future, and if our real goal is to invite a wider population of students, a more diverse population, then why not reach out to the maybe single parents who cannot get to class? Why not make us accessible to people who, for whatever reason, cannot get transportation? So I do this. I broadcast class, and the students sitting at home then, they, first of all, I can share my presentation with them. So they have access to my slides. In fact, this Echo system is actually built in as a ribbon. You can add it to PowerPoint, so all you need to do is run PowerPoint, and you got this ribbon, and you click a button, and on your slides are shared with the students automatically. So the students have access to the slides here, first of all. If they're sitting at home, they can see what's being projected on the screen. And if you're in a classroom like mine that also has a camera in the back, you can see basically what's going on inside the class here. If I'm gesturing or something, you'd be able to see that then. And at the same time, in this window over here now, yes, I can show them slides, but I can also now ask all kinds of questions, included, multiple choice, etc. And the students can take notes on the right side. We're going to come back and talk about many of these features and the value of them finding to the students. Oh, there we are. So then, this little button up here, the students wanted to be able to pose questions. Now, also in engineering, I'm not blessed with a great amount of teaching assistants. I'm given one TA for 250 students. So a part of the system was thinking about how do I do this efficiently and effectively with that many students. So this is the answer. Is that with that button, then the students can pose questions. Let's see if this works. All right, I see. The students can ask questions here. They can review what questions I've asked. And in this window over here, if that happens, I'll show you in a moment, we go away and it'll show you the questions that are being asked. And God bless them, my teaching assistant, GSI, is now sitting in the front of the room, or staying at home, it doesn't matter, and answering the questions as they come in. Basically doing spin control on what Perry is saying. Saying, well, he didn't really mean to say that. No, that was wrong, too. And this is going on all the while. Now, I could look at that myself. I don't, but I could look at that. And if I had a small class, I could look at that as class is going on to see if there are any questions coming in. Now, the students are going to see all the questions coming in, and they're going to see the answers, and they can even answer each other's questions, but you don't see who asked the question. We as instructors know who's asking the questions. On our screen, we'd know that, but on their screen, no. And that wound up having tremendous value. This idea of having anonymous question possibilities opens the door then. You don't have to be fearful about asking the dumb question. So, oh, and also, they can bookmark slides and say, I think that's going to be on the exam. If they bookmark it in their notes here, it actually adds a bookmark in their notes they can go back to later. Also, as you take notes in here, after class, you go click on the note, it opens up the video at the spot you took the note. How cool is that? So you can link your notes back to the video. So I was just thinking about how students can go back through their notes, and they need to be efficient as well. And then the last button up there is indicating confusion. And basically, I have no idea what Perry's talking about. I call it the WTF button. And you click that, it does two things. One, again, it marks your slides and saying I'm confused here. so you can go back and review later. But it also sends a signal to me and the instructor in the front of the room, and you have a meter showing how many students are confused. You know? Now, I might still ignore that because after 39 years, I'm pretty sure I know where students are going to be confused on these topics. But it's still useful to look at after class because they can find spots where students were confused, and that might might change your design for next time to come back and go over that topic in a different way. But you're getting data like you've never had before about what's going on in your class, because every time they click anything on here, it's stored. You have access to that. You can download that for analysis later. Oh, here we go. So here on the right side, then you'd be able to see the questions. New questions are coming in here, and sometimes these are questions which are more logistics based. You know, when's the next exam and such. And more than half the time, though, they're content questions. And the power of this is the students can ask the question when they have it during class. Unexpected outcome is we hardly ever get students at office hours because we're asking the questions when they have them during class. Now, this was a little bigger burden on my GSI, but I've got tenure. So, but this channel, the side channel here, let me show you what happened. All right, first of all, the number of questions, this slide's a little bit old. The number of questions asked, I've got a graph I should have brought here with the last 4 semesters. I'm averaging over 700 questions per semester. You know, for all the previous years, I might get a total dozen questions verbally. 700 questions is so sobering to know how confusing I've probably been for the previous 35 years and didn't know it. But the beauty of this is students are posing questions. They're averaging like, what, 2.7 questions per student over the semester. You've given them the channel to ask the dumb question, and I'm hoping, though I have no data to support it yet, it's possible that students will see that their questions are no dumber than anybody else's questions. And they will learn from that, well, I may as well raise my hand because I can't be any dumber than the other questions. So I'm hoping, I'd like to believe that this would help them see that they, I was a first generation student, I grew up in Appalachia. When I went to college, there was absolutely no way I was going to raise my hand and ask a question because I didn't think I even belonged to school. And many of my professors thought that too. So the ability for you to pose questions like this allows you to become part of the community without a sort of a low entry fee. So I've seen value in this.
So you don't have anything in there that's like, oh, go with this question, or this is a good question, because I wonder how many of those questions, like how much higher that number would be if they couldn't already see other people's questions and everybody asked all the questions that they really have.
Oh, right? Good point. So if you saw a question, maybe you don't ask it if it's already been asked. Right. You can actually vote them up. Okay. So we do have a way of measuring. Yeah. And I should say that the School of Information, there was a class in the School of Information. Again, you do these things, you don't think about the consequences. But now having 700 a semester, so I have now probably over the last 6 semesters something like 3,000 questions have been asked. Well, that just now went into a database, and then the School of Information is building a new system I won't talk about today, that the student could then start asking a question, and it just goes through all the questions that have ever been asked in this class and pops up, a potential 3 or 4 of them. So now they can ask me questions 24/7. We just can, as this builds up over time, you're going to have questions about relativity or whatever that others will have later, and this becomes a database that they can study off later or at night. Oh, and the other big news is, yeah, we get lots of questions, that's great, and voila, women are now asking more questions per capita than the male students. Students for whom English is not the native language are asking as many questions as the rest of the students. So victory, right there. We've leveled the playing field by allowing everybody to participate in a way that's safe and at least less stressful. So I'm excited about this and writing a paper about it now about, others have argued that students should be willing to ask questions verbally. Well, I don't disagree, but that's just naive. People need to have a channel to ask questions. And if they're uncomfortable, they should still have a channel. Right. That set you up. Yes?
So I'm a little confused about how the class is run actually. So is the lecture pre-recorded?
No.
So it's like everything is live.
Yeah.
So students are asking while you are speaking at the
Yeah,
same time?
Yeah.
Is that kind of confusing?
For who?
For students, like if they are asking questions and you're speaking at the same time?
I've not asked that of the students. Typically, lectures are going at a pace that you can find time to ask a question on almost any lecture. So I've not heard that back from any students. They find that students seem to at least they think they're good at multitasking. You know, so they seem pretty comfortable doing that. And most have found that side channel to be a benefit. Otherwise, they wouldn't get the question answered.
So you also briefly mentioned that it puts a bit more work onto the GSI's plate. Although you also mentioned that the number of office hour visits have gone down. Presumably, on net, the GSIs even profit too, right?
Well, the GSIs have been quite happy with this system, yeah. I mean, on a higher level, we're all happy with the system because the students are participating at a higher level. And you're inviting the students into inquiry. And they are asking the questions on their minds. Or, it's not uncommon after teaching that you maybe missed something. Students might ask that question. And the whole class can benefit from the answer that comes from that. So it expands the class. And it gives actually the GSI probably a higher value. In fact, at the end of every semester, the GSI always gets the biggest applause, as they should, because they've done a lot of work for the course.
So it is an attractive system to the GSI too. I just wanted to emphasize that.
They wouldn't complain to my face, but for the most part, they've been happy with it.
I want to just revisit this first question from just maybe a slightly different angle. Have you had to change the pace or the amount of content that you do during your lecture to compensate for maybe some of the overhead that's involved with the students to have to ask questions and interact with the system and you at the same time?
I probably should have, but I don't. I cover at least the same material I've always covered. Actually, I believe I'm covering it better now because the system, lets me ask the questions, and that's the part that was missing before. So I could just ramble through this stuff and probably be done in 3/4 of the time. But by adding the questions, it helps you also as the instructor think about what are your learning objectives today. And it's also important in this whole process that you think about how you're going to incentivize the students to participate. So I make some portion of their grade be participation. And if I ask 4 questions during class and they answer 3, they get a 75 for the day. I don't care if they get it right or wrong, I just want them to participate. And the goal being that if I ask a question in class, it's for a good reason, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it's the kind of question I would ask on an exam. But it's forced me to think about, well, what do I want them to learn today? And if I want them to learn that, then I better test to see if they understand it as class is going on. And that's sort of changed the way I teach to think more carefully about, am I going to go blather off about some story of my youth and, off topic, or am I going to focus on the things that I really want the students to walk away understanding? So I found it personally helpful to focus how I deliver the material and define then what should be on the exam. And when we do make the exams, we go back and make sure the questions are not going to be the same questions, but they're going to be similar content.
Sure. I think those blathering stories are useful. They're anchoring points for the students, right? Yeah, we talked about this concept.
You've not heard my story. I can blather. Okay.
So I think I heard this, I just want to confirm this. If you've got students who ask the same question over and over, is there a frequently asked question space and those things just automatically
Not yet,
pop
but that's the thing we're building.
Okay.
Yeah. I almost don't want that.
I wonder.
I want students to, and not just go, oh, that question's been asked. I want them to ask the question again in a new semester and let a new GSI answer the question. And I think that's healthy.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the system at night, we take advantage of the questions that have been asked, but during class, that's supposed to be the learning moment. So.
Very good.
So coming back to that increase you saw with ESL students and female students asking those questions, have you been able to separate out the kind of how much of that is down to the anonymity and how much is that down to the written versus verbal questions?
How would I do that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you have to ask them. I guess you have to survey them at the end. But it's interesting to me to think about ESL students. What's their comfort level with different types of communication?
Yeah. I haven't thought about that. And by the way, another reason I do these talks is to think about, get ideas for, because I do surveys. One of the things, 5 points in my class I call common good, which means you're going to help Harry. And you get, and those 5 points are related to doing surveys. One at the beginning of the semester, one after the first exam, and then 3 others. And forget forever adding questions to that. So I can stick that. You'll email me now that question, and I'll ask the students this semester how they feel about that. Those questions are constantly being upgraded as well. So we try to think about what else do we need to know in order to be. I mean, ultimately. The ultimate goal here is I want to be able to mentor the students who I fear are going to do badly. So I need to know what your motivation is to do that. I need to know something about your background to do that, and anything else I need to know. Oh, I wasn't going to talk about that today, but one of the things I'll come back to that. You had a question.
Where is this system available at? Is it only at engineering?
I will show you that towards the end here. You can. It's on campus, and you just click a button, and there it is. Victoria.
Just 2 things come to mind. So, I mean, this is really, really interesting and compelling. I just wonder, to what extent does this absolve is not the right word, but student preparation for a lecture. Reading material like. Reading ahead and kind of being familiar with what's going to be covered in lecture. To what extent would this maybe sort of lessen the need for that? And then kind of a complement to that is that to what extent does it kind of reinforce instant gratification in a classroom as opposed to it's okay to be uncomfortable with something or not know and have to sort of undertake a process of exploration on your own to try and figure out that answer. And then also, with having a GSI sitting in the classroom answering questions, again, that's, does that reinforce the idea that it's not really my responsibility. I'm going to pose this question and the GSI has to do the work to kind of clarify or fill in the gaps that a student should be doing.
Those are all high-level questions, and I have no idea to answer them. I have used this in a number of ways, and one of them was more a flip class, where you record the lecture, and then I spend class time just, as I'll show you in a moment, asking questions and having the students participate in activities. So how much do you worry about them a priori preparing for class? I don't know how it's changed that or if it's changed that. In the foundational courses, of course, it's always a challenge to get them to do that. I guess I don't have good answers for you. All right, well, let me, yes, one more.
So to get a sense of, can you describe 3 numbers? How large your class is in terms of enrolled students, how large the class is in the classroom without that system or historically, and how many you have on an average winter day to get a sense. And then I have a follow-up question.
I have. Fabian, to come to set me up for the following slides. So, yeah, hold that thought. All right, second is examine the ways to help students understand what they don't understand, the metacognition part. So that is our job in front of the room, is to help them not to, answer their questions necessarily, but help them understand what they are not getting during class. So, and a lot of this, I did a sabbatical with this fall. Again, I'm a meteorologist, and I went with Carl Wyman. He was at the University of British Columbia at the time. And the beauty of this was, and he won a Nobel Prize. He wore around, literally. So we would meet as a group of scientists and then read the education literature. Now, reading education literature for me is kind of like you trying to read an article in atmospheric science. That's, they're all technical and the jargon is different, so it's kind of hard to understand. So we sit around the table and kind of read these articles and translate them for the educationally impaired kind of thing. Well, what do you think they meant by this? That used to be a verb, and now it's a noun. So we sat together, and he was superb at thinking about this issue. How do you challenge students to understand what they don't understand? So in this window here, this capacity force ask formative assessment. It's very important to challenge the students, let them try to answer a question. The hardest part of this whole system is coming up with good questions. Because you want a question, on average, that maybe 50%-ish or less get right. If you ask that kind of question, then you've got a lot of students who got it wrong. We're going to try to, well, wait a minute. Why did I get that wrong? So you sort of got them invested in finding out what the right answer is. So that's an art form. And it just evolves over time. You try questions, and if they're all getting it right, if it's a terrible question, go back and refine it. So here's what you can do, though, in this system we built, and I built it, again, with a thought based on those readings we were doing, that clickers were great. You can ask a question, a multiple choice question like this: what makes the atmosphere less stable? And you can see that in the particular class session. Probably not the best question because most students got it right, yay. But also a goodly number got it wrong here. And that by itself is interesting. But with this system, when you create a question, you can click a button, and it requires the students to tell you why they chose the button they did. So now you can go click on any one of the letters, A, B, C, or D, and it's going to show you the thinking of the student who chose B or C or whatever. And on top of it, so this is all the people who chose B, here was their logic. Now again, there are no names here, so I can now in front of the class sort of give them feedback about how I would grade their thinking. And did they get it right for the wrong reason? Difference in temperature will make it unstable. Well, that's incomplete. Somebody needs coffee there. Go back to your home. And you can make fun of them because there's no names attached. And point out that's going to get like 2 points out of 10 because you haven't given them enough information, and point out what kinds of answers you're looking for. And so in this process, if you design your questions right, you have the opportunity to uncover misconceptions. Why? Maybe they're getting it right for the wrong reason. Maybe they're getting it wrong for, well, they're really wrong. But it's a great way to go deeper than just multiple choice. I want to know what their thinking is and be able to give them some guidance about how I think as a scientist and what I'm hoping that they would be thinking when they take the exam.
Gary?
Yep.
So does the software somehow group similar responses? Or is there anything that happens with that, or you just have 250?
An excellent question. At the moment, I just have 250. But I can't talk about that.
You cannot.
So I mean, yeah, it's coming. I'll show you towards the end the new stuff, and part of it is how do you cluster answers so you don't have to go through 250, but you actually just look at the majority answers. Another kind of question I just love being in this field is ask questions which are visual. So in this case, again, I can ask, I challenge you to do this. What part of this image does not make sense to you? And why? And now you would your head, I guess. Put a dot on the image, and then a little window will pop up, and you have to tell me why you chose that spot. And this wound up just changing my course. Because what happened is I showed this on my slide 3 on the lecture on hurricanes, and by the end of class I'd gotten to slide 5. Because this wound up being center of attention, because you invited the students now to pose for inquiry. They're going to pose questions. Let me show you what happened.
Wow.
Buckshot. and I think I actually spat the coffee out when I saw this. and being a wise guy, I said, all right, I'm going to pick on the kid here in the middle of South America. Really needs their own coffee. And I did that. And the question that they asked is, why are those storms coming off the coast of South America? Oh my gosh, well, I wound up being a superb question. There's all these hurricanes here in the North Atlantic. Wow, what's going on here in the South Atlantic? Which led to a conversation I didn't expect to have, but a good one. Led to it just really fed nicely into why do hurricanes form here and not here. I won't go through it with you right now, but that wound up being an excellent scientific question. And so I spent most of the rest of the hour basically going from dot to dot and talking about their questions, and many of them, well, some were dumb, but most of them were quite interesting. Let's see here. Why are there no hurricanes along the equator? Is that significant? Well, that was actually the only question I was hoping for. And you see the Coriolis force is 0 at the equator, and so you have to have some rotation under you in order to get the storms to rotate. So you have to be about 5 degrees away from the equator before the storms can organize into a hurricane. And by many of the dots all over the place, and so many of them were excellent questions, but you just invited the students to really now kind of drive the class. And I'm doing my job then is giving them the feedback that they're looking for. It's just, if I could do this every day in class, I would, because it really does involve them. And Melissa Gross teaches anatomy and uses the same sort of thing about, knee bone connected to the thigh bone, whatever kinesiology does. And again, and for anatomy and such, it's just a great kind of tool. You can imagine in almost any discipline, whether you have graphs or you have images, this is a way for you to engage the students in conversation. But what you've just done there is you've changed the class from being this didactic, I'm going to lecture to you about hurricanes, to an interactive session. Even though more than half of them aren't there. They're still posing questions and giving their feedback and input wherever they are. So, on top of all this and behind the scenes, we're measuring them. What are students doing? Any questions on that, by the way, before I go on? The question types include multiple choice, image-based. There's a reorder list where you have, maybe in a lab you want to go from step 1 to step 5. What's the right order? And the students can drag those around. There's a numerical question where you set the limits on what you'll accept as the correct answer. And there's the short answer where they're just simply going to write a sentence or two. So, next. And this, again, was a surprise to me. I didn't expect this, but the data you get out of this system is phenomenal. I mean, you're going to know things about your class that you have never known, for better or worse. Because the data it's collecting as well. Are students attending class? Are they answering questions? Are they getting questions right? Are they taking notes? Are they looking at the videos after class? And all this is data you can download in the system. So here we go. So this is now lasting 6 semesters. And multiple instructors have taught this course on the 102. And the system's been used every year in this course. And you see that number of students in the course on the left here, and how many activities we present to the students over the course of the semester. All right, and what was happening here is all this data is being collected inside this Echo360 system, which you can download in a spreadsheet for your own research. But on top of that, I've been working with the people here on campus to take that data and then also draw in the data of what students are doing in Canvas, in our case. Some background information from the student information system about student demographics and such, and data coming from other products out there. And compile it all into a central database on campus here. And as we do that, we bring the data in, and then we throw student identity away. So in this, the outcome of this is the database where it's all the data of everything the students are doing and everything about them, but there's no way to identify a student. And I can hand that to an analyst who can do the statistical analysis or research to see what is it digitally that students do in either the LMS or from background information or from the Echo that in any way affects their grades in class. So, some outcomes of this, having access to this data, are, first of all, attendance is important. And the strength here is I could just say that, as I have for 30 or some years, but now I have a graph I can show the students on day one. And when I say attendance here, I understand what I'm saying is attendance means you're either in the classroom or you're participating from home. You are attending in whatever way. And the students who attend a lot, they average quite a high grade. The students who attend less well, they get lower grades with the distribution here. Again, evidence. The outcome that I'm hoping for is, well, let me hold that thought.
Oh, can I ask you a
Sure.
question? So, is there a possibility that there are students who come physically to lecture but they don't participate in the system, or is that a requirement in the class?
Again, you have to incentivize. Students are smart, and they won't really do anything unless you make it worth something. So, this gets deeper. Typically, I make it 15% of your grade is participation. The reality is, I also, at the beginning of the semester, let the students decide how they're going to be graded. That participation can be anywhere between, I think it's 10 and 20%. Homework can be anywhere between 0 and 20%. Exams can be anywhere between 60 and 90%. So I let them decide how they want the grades weighted. So I want the students to think about how they are going to be able to demonstrate their knowledge best. Some are just really good at exams, fine. They don't want to do any homework, fine.
So each individual student gets
Exactly.
their distribution?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. And all that data is done in a spreadsheet. And of course, Canvas blows up, doesn't know how to do these things, but so I just upload their weights that they have to decide before the first exam. And those weights get added to Canvas so they can see what they've chosen. But nonetheless, they have to choose some percent of the grade from participation. Because again, if I'm going to pose a question, I think it's valuable for them to participate. So that's why, percentages are going to be pretty high here for participation.
Right. I was just thinking about sort of accessibility and if a student can't afford a laptop or...
Correct. Another one of the questions I ask the first day is, do you have access to a laptop, etc. It's been over 5 years since I had a student who didn't have access to a laptop. This is participation. Again, I'm posing questions during class. How many of my questions do you answer? And it shows if you participate more than 60% of my questions, your chance of getting a higher grade or higher. Less participation, lower grades. Again, this is evidence that I can show students then at the beginning of the semester I don't know whether actually showing them evidence stimulates them to change their behavior, but I hope that data would do that. In this world today, I'm not sure facts really matter, but here we are. At least I have the facts. And whether you're using Echo360 or you're using clickers, the most important thing you can do is measure, do students get the questions right during class, during that formative assessment. You know, you're not really grading them. I'm not giving them points for getting it right during class. But it turns out that if you're getting all the questions right during class, you're probably going to do well in the exam. Duh. But if you're not, apparently you don't take the time to learn it. So the students that got more than 60% of my questions right, they averaged 93 on my exams. You got less than 30% right, you did poorly. Again, I don't show this to students because what are they going to do? Except to try to point out that if you're getting the questions wrong during class, it behooves you to go and figure out what the right answer is and understand the right answer. But you know, I'm sure no matter how you're measuring it, you're doing your formative assessment, this winds up being the most critical key in forecasting student success.
So I think everybody has done better than the percentage of questions that they got right in class, right? So those folks who were getting 30% of your exam-like questions right in class still are getting 58% of the exam, so they've doubled their score or more between the in-class activity and the exam. Is that a correct interpretation?
Oh, that is true. I see what you're saying. So they got 0 to 30% right during class, they still scored a 68 on the exam. That is one way to interpret it, or the other is my exams are too easy. But, so it's hard to compare.
You aren't going to weigh in on which one of those might be?
Well, but the in-class questions are geared for a 50% correct rate. Is that what you said before?
Well, they're geared towards that, but I fail miserably many days. And they all get it right. I feel like I just wasted everybody's time. But that happens. Okay, so I'm sure there are questions about this issue of live streaming, and I'm not going to sit here and promote it necessarily. This is an option to have with Echo. That my students love. I mean, one of the questions I ask at the end of the semester is, would you recommend live streaming for other courses? And it's like 90% yeah. Especially these intro courses, they want to be able to attend class, but they have other things they have to be doing, or the weather's bad, or last night was Thursday, or whatever. They aren't coming to class. It gives them the opportunity to do that. Interesting part here is this is the it changes participation. So what this tries to show up here at the top is that the students come to class with over a 3.5 average. And by the way, unknown here, it means that these are freshmen who don't yet have a GPA. So the students with a high GPA coming in, that means that 40% of the time they physically come to class, and 14% of the time they blow class off, and in between there, what's that going to be, 46% of the time they participate remotely. But for the students with a low grade point coming in, they only physically come to class 29% of the time. So there's dramatic differences in how they engage in the class. So this leads me to worry some. In fact, I've written a paper on, does streaming your class incubate mediocrity? Because you're giving the student who is less committed the opportunity to kind of sit at home, which they're clearly taking. And they're also blowing off class at a higher rate than the other students. Now, this is news that I didn't know. And I'm going to argue that many of the data I'm showing you, I should know as the instructor, but the advisors should have access to this also. If if the advisors could see what Johnny is doing, then I'm guessing the advisors would know what to do, or I kind of just say, work harder. They would have better strategies. And freshmen, God bless them, they come to class more than the rest of the group. Yeah.
So that averages across students in these groups, right? So there may be students in here that never come to class?
Correct. Right.
Do you have those numbers? Or?
Oh, of course.
I'm just setting up for you.
Thank you. You want to do this slide? And this is the kind of slide, because basically I want to give the students enough rope. I have no problem failing students. I don't enjoy it, but it doesn't bother me either. I tell the students that I have tenure. I don't care if you fail. But I'm going to give you the opportunities to learn how you learn best. And you are going to either grab the opportunity or you're going to fail. So one of the graphs I can show them is here. So of the students who got more than 90 on my exams, they came to class half the time, watched class from away 40% of the time, and blew me off for 10% of the time. The students who got less than 70 only came to class 30% of the time on average, about the same amount that they watched from away, but they skipped class altogether at a higher rate. Wink, wink. Again, you're able to show them data from your own class about how behaviors in the past have affected students. It gives me the hope that I could be able to message the student through the semester and say, well, based on your behaviors, this is the way students in the past, this is the outcomes of students in the past. And I'm trying to build that system now where I would be able to, by the end of week 3, be able to send them that email saying, yeah, Johnny, I know something you don't know, and you are going to fail. I wouldn't word it quite that way, but I'm trying to think about how do I word this and say, well, based on your behaviors, here's what what past students have gotten. But here's what you can do to improve yourself. So, and this is not surprising. This is just based on what's their incoming grade point versus the average exam scores, and over multiple semesters, there's that relationship. It's disappointing to me. It means that I, as the instructor, have not done a very good job of taking these students down here and helping them be successful. So what can I do to make that change? All right. Well, here's some reality that I've learned having this data. The students with a high grade. This is now the minutes of lecture capture. So how much do you go and review the lecture capture after class? Students with a high grade point coming into the class, they're averaging 22 out of the 50 minutes of class over the whole semester. So they go back and they review this material, reflect on the material, which tells me I must be very confusing if you have to go review that much material, but fine. Whereas the students with a low grade point has one minute over, on average over the whole semester. So they probably hit the site, thought it was ESPN or something, and go, whoa. That's very shoot. But there's dramatic differences then, and advisors should know this. They should have access to this kind of data and know what's Johnny doing in the class, so they can actually provide maybe more detailed advice to the student. Here's a big one, because I can measure also how many notes students take. Now, I don't actually see their notes, but I know word count, how many notes they've taken. And also, I do point out at the beginning of the semester, research exists that shows that writing your notes longhand is probably a better way to connect to your brain than the material being presented. And so, but in my class, 52% of students choose to take notes online. Maybe like me, they can't read their handwriting. So of the students who took notes online, I have data. You got a high grade point coming in, you take on average 130 words of notes per class. The students with a low grade point, 2 words. I can guess what those 2 words are. But there's a dramatic difference here in these populations of how students are participating in the class experience. And it seems to me that these students should know about this disparity and get some sense of this. So I'll come to that at the end, is how do I help students take better notes? Is going to be one of the outcomes I'll hope you get to towards the end here. And then this is my new thing. The goal I'm coming towards is a price sheet. A price sheet that I could send to the student that says, all right, look, you walked into my class, you had a 3.5 average. To be honest, it doesn't matter what you do. You're going to do fine. That's just the history of that class is that you know how to study, you're going to be fine. Keep doing what you're doing, yay you. Whereas a student walks into my class at the low grade point, the yellow circles here, this is their price sheet. Look, if you're going to participate at a low level of activities in my class, you will fail. But the good news is, if you participate, the more you participate in class, you can raise yourself up to the level of the other students. What are you willing to spend? And try to drive into them that's in their hands, that they have the power to pull themselves out of the 2.5. There's probably a reason they have a 2.5 grade point, and it probably has more to do with their studies habits than it has to do with their mental capacity. And if we can create these sorts of price sheets, will that stimulate a student then to change their behavior? Well, I'm trying that experiment this semester where and earlier this semester I sent an email to each student with a graph like this explaining what that meant, and use the same logic I just taught to you. And I've yet to go back and look, but my thinking is, from the day I sent that email, did their behavior change? Was that email effective? Did it affect certain populations of students more than others? But we will see. But the goal here is moving towards a time when I could create, or better yet, automate some sort of feedback to them, kind of like what eCoach does, but even at a higher level. It says that given your background and given other characteristics that you've got, here is how you can raise yourself up in this class. Any questions about this?
Where do you think the appropriate point to present the students with this information? Where do you get the most value at?
Yeah, that's a
is
great
it before
question.
the class starts? Is it?
Yeah. All right. Let's have a discussion about that. I would like ideas about what you think. John, what do you think?
I think this might actually be demotivating to the 2.5, 3.0 student. The first few weeks of class.
First few weeks. Yeah. So you would say, would you present it at all?
Maybe before. Hey, you're considering taking this class.
Well, before you take the class, so then I'd be filtering out the students with low grade point.
Maybe.
I don't want to do that.
About expected workload.
It's going to depend on how you frame the way you present them. I think before asking when should I present this data, you have to ask what's the story that comes with the data. So if you're telling the 3.0 students you don't really have to participate, you're still going to do well, then obviously that's going to be demotivating. But if you frame it in a different way and you don't necessarily highlight that part of the data, or you tell a different story with that, then that's going to feed into when's going to be a good time to present the data.
Well, that's a good thought. And the thought I actually had was that if I was sending this out, since the system is, you can code anything you want to, so I was going to make it so that if you were a 2.5 student, you'd only see this line. If you're a 3.5, you'd only see that line. I don't want, you're right, I don't want to demotivate you because you're dumb. It doesn't work.
Also, I think it could be fixed with the metrics. So presumably, the 2.5 student who really shows up is at 75%. You could translate that into GPA score, and I bet it would basically, the story would be, you're actually going to increase your GPA. You're going to do better in this class than you do on average. The 75%, what does that translate into? Something larger than 2.5, right?
Yeah, well, you're up at least at the level of the 2.5 to 3.0 student.
So I'm guessing, so I'm saying don't make it relative to others, make it relative to your own GPA attainment, and you'll see, you'll do better than in your other courses.
Of course, this is specific just to my course and the way I teach, and your mileage may vary. But assuming that this course isn't all that different from your other courses, there's a big hint here for how you should participate globally.
Yeah, I mean, so it looks like actually most of your students are underperforming their GPA, which is not super surprising given the nature of the class. That's been seen in a lot of places, but like your 3.5 students are hovering in the sort of B- to a B range, whereas their GPA would suggest that they usually are a mix of A's and B's. So that in and of itself could be demotivating, let alone the shape of the curve. And then I'd love to figure out how to parse that curve into different parts for that. People succeed in classes for different reasons. They take a class that's super easy for them, they kind of already know the material. They take a class that's challenging, but they work really, really hard. They're, very good at using a lot of resources, whatever those factors are. So maybe.
Well, it's complicated. I do know, for example, there's some percent of the class, there's a cohort of students in the class who are taking it because it's going to be for the engineering students who just need 3 hours to fill, and this course is going to be pretty easy for them. So they're the ones who are going to say, give me 90% on the exams, I don't want to do any work, let me just I'll dial in from away and participate that way. And so the students who watch from away tend to be a bifurcation of the students who just really don't need to come to class because they're just going to get it, and the students who are just not motivated to come to class and have a lower GPA. So yeah, it's got to be probably eventually more sophisticated than this, and this is just it's simply one measure, but it could include multiple dimensions of note-taking and other reflections. And so we know there's a whole bunch of stuff. This is going to creep you out. There's a whole bunch of stuff we're measuring about the students. I showed you a moment ago that I'm sharing my slides with them. We measure how many of the slides they actually view during class. We measure the delta T, the time difference between when I change the slide and they change the slide. So we're measuring stuff behind the scenes to try to come up with a sort of measure of attentiveness on top of this. And those are also other dimensions that are important. But the key important measures that we're seeing in terms of predicting success in the class are this formative assessment again, right at knowing their GPA. Those two together explain a tremendous percentage of the variance in student grades. Then you can add on top of that, get some more by adding other stuff. At least the way I teach class, the stuff the students are doing in Canvas has no effect on their grade. So that's just probably the way I teach my course.
You mentioned that you allow your students some flexibility in tailoring the weighting for the scoring. Would it be useful for those lower performing incoming students to be able to see what were successful weightings, more successful weightings from past students?
Good question. You think the student would be seeing that? What motivation would you expect?
If there was a clear pattern to how higher performing students who came in, sort of that 2.5 level, maybe that points to the fact that those lower performing students are more successful at maybe more of the formative activities versus the having more weighting on the final exam.
Good question. I have not done that research, so again, send me a question. I'll be happy to ask the students what they think about that. Do they want to know the distribution of the students? I guess off the cuff, what I'm seeing is that the students who walk in and they feel confident they're going to do well in the class, they will tend to choose a high number for exams. the students who walk in who are less comfortable with science will make the exam score as low as possible because they feel like they can participate and they can do the homework and that they can do with confidence, but this exam stuff is they're less confident about.
Have you tried this to learning analytics data?
Oh, this is learning analytics.
No, but I mean, other stuff in terms of just socioeconomic class. How many of them have jobs on the outside, right? I mean, some of these kids are professional students, right?
Correct.
And others come in from different backgrounds.
Well, all that is included in that early beginning exam I did, beginning survey I do. So I have the data, I just haven't done that. And I'm always looking for students who want to do research. Because I mean, there's so many questions. Once you have these data, there's just so many questions. You can slice and dice various ways.
To your original thought about when would you share this kind of data with a student, I would think that equally important is how else are you reinforcing what story the data is telling, how they can impact it kind of throughout the semester and at different key touch points. And not assume that for all students a certain time is going to have the most impact, but they even know what participation means at the point when you're sharing that, that they can ask the right questions about these kinds of statistical averages to make a good decision, whatever that means, make the best decision for themselves. To be able to determine which will be the best way for me to demonstrate my competence, right? So being able to.
Well, what I'm doing is I would call a push system. I'm pushing to them information and they may respond to that. The alternative is a pull system where we create a page the student can go and see then their metrics and how that compares to others in the class. And I did ask them about that in a survey a year or two ago, and the response surprised me. Whether the students really didn't want to see that. Maybe it's going back to this issue that they just felt maybe intimidated if they're doing badly. They just don't want to be reminded that they're doing badly, and they know why they're doing badly, probably.
Yeah. I guess what I was thinking of was even with a push system, though, you in lecture can then break down what does participation mean for this, right? And then a month in, say, let's revisit, you know, the data that probably all of you have received at some point, right? Even if they got different data. About the impact of participation on grades. So how are you feeling about that? How is that looking right now? Are there parts of participation that you're not participating in? There are parts of this that you're not doing that maybe you could, right? And so making it a continuing conversation, particularly for the 2.5 GPA students who presumably don't have all of the experience with these kinds of issues. It's not, like you said, it's not intellect, right? It's a set of
I've always been a bit uncomfortable about, like in lecture, let's say the rest of this part is just for you kids with 2.5 and less. Here's some advice for you, because that sort of singles them out and again reinforces that they're.
So could you make an abstract about participation? Okay, I guess that's all I was saying, is how do you reinforce this conversation at different points? That's all, in different ways.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't know.
I don't either.
I see your whole feet. I was hoping you did it. So. Shoot, you know, I know my science. I would like to think that data like this could help me help students. I guess I'm looking to the community. You know, let's think together. If we all have this data in our classes, what would we do? How would it help us? And that's sort of the bigger thinking I want to come out of this.
So the question about the weighting, you have them do it in the beginning? How often do you have them come to you in the middle of the semester and go, you know, I think I'm doing better in this spot. Could I change this?
That happens.
Okay.
I've got a canned response. Nope.
Nope. Okay.
No, it's a game.
Sure.
And here are the rules. Day one, I'm saying I want you to think about how you learn.
Okay.
And you're going to gamble and make a choice here, and you might be wrong, but it's on you. And maybe next semester you'll know now what you do. It makes you more aware, at least, of how you learn. So again, it's a wonder level class, and it's, you know, it's a great place for them to make mistakes.
Perfect.
Oh, here's another. This is now. Oh, this is a slide view. So again, basically, it's more about attentiveness. To what degree are you participating? Are you viewing the slides during class? And here we can see, you know, the more attentive you are, regardless of grade point, your grades are tend to go up. So how I market this and it's how I actually present it to the students is a place that I'm still working with. All right, we've got some time yet. So questions? Any more questions at this point about the data analysis? This data is available to you if you use this Echo system.
So you're showing us all stuff on your course?
I am.
Is there someone doing this across courses?
Well, of course, I'm no, because I can't look at somebody else's course data without the approval of the students in that class. So, and I could go on a tirade now about the issues I may have with IRB. I won't. I'm a mature human being, and I won't do that. But it would be nice if we could figure out how to have CRLT or somebody do that sort of study. We suck in data from multiple courses and see how it works.
So wait, is Echo tied into the learning analytics thing too?
Yeah.
So Echo can not only give you data from your class, but it'll tie it into everything we know about what's in learning analytics database. Will it do a linear regression on the data?
You can, but you can download the data and do that, yes.
But so will it at least give you, so all the data just comes in a CSV file, or
yeah.
will it, so it'd be really cool if Echo would actually do the linear regression. Like, that's cool.
That would be cool. I can't talk about it. But I can talk about the next thing, if you have a moment left here. What is this? Okay, this is just going back to the issue. Because I broadcast my class, invariably there's a question about, wait a minute, if fewer students come into class, that can't be good. And I've already given you a hint about what happens. But the student can sit, they're sitting at home, and they can answer the questions here, they can see what's going on, they can see what's being projected. And first of all, what I find, this is over the weeks of the semester here, and the orange is how many students physically come to class, of the entire percentage of class. It starts early in the semester. Why don't you just tell them that, you know, you can watch from home or come to class, we're gone. Half of them physically come to class at the beginning of the semester. By the end of the semester, it's probably down to 30%. So, and for the instructor, that's probably uncomfortable, because now you got a big room with few people in it, and it's disquieting. On the other hand, the reddish part here is how many students are participating daily from away, and that stays high enough. So the combination of the two is that your attendance is going to be somewhere around between 80 and 90% per day, which is way higher than I've ever had in my previous years at the university. So now the question is, okay, the students who are watching from away, are they attending in a way that's truly meaningful? And on the right here gives you a hint that the percent are physically in class. The more you're physically in class for multiple semesters here, basically the higher the grades they were. So and this makes sense. If you're sitting at home, I don't know how many of you have done webinars, right? You're in your office, there's a webinar on, you're doing other stuff. And you're kind of listening to the webinar, but you're probably not picking up as much if you're physically in the room. And for me, if I'm sitting at home, much less watching class, the refrigerator knows my name. We got pickles, Jimmy. And you're likely to be less attentive. So this is probably not surprising. It does beg the question, though, that maybe the students with a low GPA, in the past they just sort of blown class off, but at least now they have an ear in the class, so it might be a step in the right direction. But there is certainly a drop-off, and this is the kind of graph I do show my students as a whole. You can make the choice, you can watch from home, but there might be an issue here, depending on your ability to be distracted. And again, this is what? Percent of in-class attendance. So, yeah, yay, freshmen. They show up at the highest rate. The students at the high grade point show up at the second highest rate. The low GPA students come to class physically the least. And this is just, again, the attentiveness issue. How many slides are they viewing during class time? If you're physically in class more than 75% of the time, you are more attentive to the slides being presented than if you're just sitting at home. Again, it makes sense. So these are decisions we have to make. We're reaching a larger audience. Your attendance is going to be higher. But again, the students at home need to be reminded that they have to find their own ways to be attentive. My thing is, I'm going to treat students as adults. And if they are making these choices, they have to learn time management sooner or later. Why not in college, and particularly at the 100 level, foundational course level. So again, I'm giving them the rope to succeed or fail. I don't know what that was. All right. So the last thing I want to show you is sort of the new work. And it's just stuff that we're just in the process of building. I built it last summer here in Ann Arbor. And how we provide mentorship at scale to students based on what I've learned to date. All right, we're going to general questions. The last thing I wanted to show you here. If you wanted to use this system, it is quite simple to do that in Canvas. First of all, you would go to your class site, and at the bottom there's a button called, I can't read that, whatever that says. Settings is right. Thank you. And you click on settings, then click on the button up here that says navigation. And under navigation, you'll find the active learning platform as an option. And you just dragged it up into the active area here, as we've done there, and you're done. So then it's part of your Canvas site. And then you click it first as the instructor, and that uses this LTI technology to indicate to Echo this is an instructor who wants this in their course, and it sets up the course in Echo. And then the students come and click the button, and it automatically again tells Echo that this student is enrolled in this course. So they do this through they can do this through that button inside of Canvas. It's pretty easy to set up, and if you want to do that, email me. I can happily help you with it, and it would show up then on your page. It's just another button on the left here that you can click, and this whole system I just showed you is now available in your course. And there's a web page which also is there to provide you help on how to do any of these things. So that's the fundamentals for how you add this to your class. We want to try. And again, I'm hoping that we can get more using it on campus so that we can collect more data so we can do some of this analysis we talked about today and see to what degree what happened in Perry's class actually is universal versus how much does it vary from course to course. We're also working with multiple. This system I built for my class is now used by, I'm told, by over 1 million students worldwide. Very popular in Australia, so we're able to collect data from many places. But I don't have access to all the data. We need to get a community here to start doing analysis on our own scale.
Do you have a sense of how many courses are using this system right now?
On this campus?
Yeah.
I can look that up. I think this semester nursing, I think, is using it quite a bit. The number is fairly low, but I can't remember what that number is.
As in single digits?
No. double digits, but not big double digits. People like Melissa Gross have been using it, and kinesiology uses it quite a bit in their courses.
So I think you gained one more. I'm totally convinced. So I wanted to say that first, to then play devil's advocate and actually have you reflect on. You already made it very clear you don't want to go back to the 90s and ask the question, is everything clear? But your lecture halls look fundamentally different because you only have 30%, at least towards the end of the semester, 30% of your students there. So besides reduced laughter about jokes, what else is there that you're missing today that you thought you had in a larger setting?
Well, I'm a fan of having students break into groups and do activities together. In fact, if you want to try this in your own class, I do this on day one when everybody's always there on day one. And I like to point out to them the value of group thinking. And I do this in Auditorium C where I teach in Angel Hall. And the room is packed, but actually there's more, since the class only holds 120 or 250 in the class, so we have people in the aisles. Fire Marshall will be really upset with me. But I have everybody just put their hands straight in the air and ask them all to point north. And if arms are, laid on every possible direction in the room, and it's all right, fine. And now I have them break into groups of 3 or 4 and debate among themselves which way is north. And then it's all right. And after a few minutes, they say, all right, now everybody point north, and invariably they're all pointing north, as a way for them to understand the value of the interactions in class. So if I had one more thing I would add to the system, it'd be that it would be a way so that a student sitting at home could join a group in the class, so we could do that whether you're in class or not. And to that end, we have a new technology. It's called the Wireless Indoor Location Device, or WILD, the WILD learning system. And with that, you have basically a QR code on each seat. And as the students walk in, they take their phone out and take a picture of that QR code. And now I know exactly where every student is seated in the room. And if you're watching from away, you can claim a virtual seat in the room. I do that for a couple of reasons. One, it gives me some hope of actually learning students' names. Second is I can now run simulations where the students in the upper left-hand corner will be Seattle, and lower right-hand corner you're going to be Miami, and I want you to control the weather. And I give you can change values of pressure and temperature, and they actually they're the input to the weather model. So in the front of the room, as they change their values, they can see how that changes the wind field. So it's thinking about how we could do real-time simulations in the room, whether you're physically in the room or not. That's probably the big thing.
Okay, so I want to just recognize that it's 2 o'clock at this point, so thank Perry for your time.